I've appreciated the hundreds and hundreds of hours that you and I and other members of the group of 6, now 8, have put into trying to find that bipartisan path to get forward, to move this country into a stable fiscal position. We face a crisis today that I think is the biggest crisis our nation has ever faced, with the possibility of the threat of some wars. But as far as an internal crisis, this is the greatest crisis I think America has ever faced. And we really must have bold, strong action to move forward. And I've looked forward for a long time to this day when the Budget Committee would have a comprehensive plan that we could discuss. I do have to say, as I've said to you privately, that I'm discouraged at the same time, though, that although the proposal is being put forward, we are not going to be able to seriously act on it in the committee. I'm very discouraged about the fact that we're not going to move forward and take the necessary steps that will help us to build that foundation for the ultimate resolution of this issue by Congress. You know, I understand that a comprehensive fiscal plan of the nature that we need to put into place is much bigger than actually a budget resolution can achieve. And I understand that there are many, many pieces of this that will need extensive negotiation to be put into place. And the reason I'm discouraged about the notion that we won't have regular order in this committee is that I believe there are, of those parts of it that the budget resolution can achieve, and those processes that the budget resolution can put into place, there are many key elements that need to be worked into it. For example, I think some things need to be taken out of the plan. Some things need to be added into the plan, and I'll give specifics about, a couple of specifics about that in a minute. But the point is, we could make significant progress if we could simply have the opportunity in this committee to get into regular order and let all of these ideas be hashed out and played out. When we talk about what is needed in terms of a comprehensive solution, you've indicated that the proposal you're putting down today is in excess of $5 trillion of deficit posture reduction. We need at least that, if not more. As I've looked at the Bowles-Simpson proposal and the Gang of Six proposals and others that are out there, it seems to me there's 5 different elements in a broad sense that need to be included. First is the discretionary spending controls. Second is major structural reform of our entitlement systems. Third is reform and achieving the solvency of the Social Security system. Fourth is an enforcement mechanism, which you've referenced earlier, that is strong enough to make sure that the Budget Control Act or whatever budgets this Congress adopts are ultimately followed through on. You know, I've served in Congress for a number of years now, and I can't recall ever getting to the second year of any budget, because we always get into the first year, and by the time we get around to the next year, we pass a new budget, or we don't pass a budget at all. And even in the first year, we waive significant parts of the budget that we have just adopted through the emergency designation procedure and other procedures. That's why it is so critical that the fourth element of this be a very powerful enforcement mechanism, which we've negotiated. And the fifth is, of course, the tax reform. As you said earlier, we have a tax system right now that is unfair. It is expensive to comply with. In fact, it would be hard for us to design a tax system that is more unfair or more expensive to comply with, more complex, and frankly, more anti-competitive to U.S. business interests than the one we have. And so those 5 elements are the things that we need to achieve. And the reason I go through that is because if we could have a chance to do a markup, we would then be able to get into the details on some of this. We wouldn't solve everything. I know that we would need much more extensive opportunities than a budget resolution would allow for that. But let me just give a couple of examples. The enforcement mechanism that I just talked about. I'd like to bring an amendment, and I'd like to see this committee adopt the enforcement mechanism that the Gang of Six negotiated. And I think it would. I think that amendment would pass this committee if we could have the chance to do so. And by doing that, we would then be putting into place, or at least putting into play, one of the key solution pieces of a broader package. Another example would be in the tax arena. As was told to us in both the Fiscal Commission and in the Gang of Six deliberations and others, one of the best things we could do for generating more revenue for our economy is to get a tax system that is more competitive and that meets all of the tests that we've both discussed here today. That would generate phenomenal economic growth, and that economic growth is the kind of thing that would generate additional tax revenues and help us to meet those revenue targets in the program, in the proposal. I'd like to bring an amendment to change our scoring mechanisms here in Congress so that we recognize the dynamic impacts of tax policy and spending policy and utilize that in building the bipartisan agreement to solutions to move forward. I think we could have big progress made on that score, on that level, if we had a chance for a markup. Another example is Senator Stabenow just mentioned that in the agriculture arena, they got the message. And they have looked at the targets, Republicans and Democrats on the ag committees in the House and the Senate, and they have started and made great progress in coming together in an agreement, bipartisan agreement, to meet those targets, even though we haven't yet enforced them. And so there are numerous other examples. My point is simply this. I am very happy to see us now getting an opportunity in a structural way in Congress to start deliberating about these issues, while we will also need to continue the negotiations outside of the hearing room and outside of the committee room. But I'm discouraged that that process will only last a short time and that we will not be in here putting into effect regular order in such a way that we could actually construct and adopt and put into place a lot of the pieces of what will ultimately be needed. And I'll conclude with this. You've mentioned what will happen at the end of the year. As I look at it, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some of it, we have the expiration of the 2001 and 2003 tax cuts. We have the sequestration coming into effect. We have the expiration of the payroll tax holiday. We have the expiration of the unemployment tax extension, or unemployment support extension. We will reach the debt ceiling. Many of the other, if we don't resolve them yet, many of the tax extenders and other tax policies that we badly need in order to help at least make our current code a little more competitive will be expired and need to be handled. And the list goes on. I just believe, and the doc fix, among many others, will come into play again at that point. And like I say, I'm forgetting some others. So, so my point is, if we can use regular order between now and hopefully the next couple of weeks to build some of the pieces and put them into play that this committee can do, we will give ourselves a much better opportunity when the November-December timeframe arrives to be able to put together the kind of fiscal policy plan that our country needs. And so I just ask you again, Mr. Chairman, to reconsider the notion that we won't go into regular order, get the budget considerations in front of us, find those parts that we have to delete in order to achieve bipartisan agreement, find those parts that we can add to it that will help build and put into place the pieces of the solution that can then help us later in the year, and adopt a budget. And I just implore you, Mr. Chairman, to consider letting this committee do that job. Thank you.
I thank the Senator, and I thank him for his extraordinary effort, both as part of the Simpson-Bowles Commission and as part of the group of 6, now the group of 8. You literally have spent hundreds of hours in a very serious way, and I've enjoyed working with the Senator. Senator Cardin is recognized for a statement.